They believed they were walking into heaven, but instead they walked into death. This is the story of a cult that promised salvation, but delivered tragedy. The year was 1978. In a small American town, hardship was everywhere. Families were searching for hope, for meaning, for a place where they belonged. And then a man appeared. A man who called himself Elias. Elias wasn't just a preacher, he was a storyteller, a visionary. He promised his followers freedom from sin, a new family, and a direct path to heaven. He called his movement the Chosen Path. At first, it seemed like a blessing. Strangers became brothers and sisters. They sang hymns together, shared meals, and dreamed of a brighter future. For the lonely and broken, Elias offered something they had never felt before, belonging. But that dream slowly began to rot. Elias demanded more. He told his followers to cut ties with family outside the group, to surrender their jobs, their money, their freedom. Your true family is here, he preached. Your only salvation is me. Those who disobeyed were humiliated, punished, or simply disappeared. Survivors later spoke of beatings, of nights filled with screams, of a fear that never left. And then, Elias revealed his darkest prophecy. The world was ending. The only way to survive, he said, was to take the final journey. A test of faith, a promise of eternal life. On a cold November night, he gathered his followers in a barn. Parents held children close. Candles flickered. And one by one, they were handed cups of what Elias called holy wine. They prayed. They wept. They believed. And then they drank. Minutes later, chaos. Screams pierced the night as bodies collapsed to the floor. Mothers clutching their children. Fathers crying out for mercy. One by one, the faithful fell, poisoned by the man they trusted most. By morning, dozens lay dead. But Elias? He was gone. No body. No trace. Just vanished into the night. Survivors insist it was murder, not suicide. That they were manipulated or forced. But the question remains to this day, did they willingly drink the poison, or were they led to their deaths? What began as a promise of salvation ended in devastation. Families were destroyed. Children stolen from life before it even began. For investigators, the Chosen Path became one of the darkest chapters in cult history. And for the survivors, the scars never healed. They had lost their families, their faith, and their innocence, all to a man who promised them heaven, but delivered only death. What do you think? Were they willing followers of Elias, or victims of his manipulation? Share your thoughts below, and if you want more untold stories of crime, cults, and mystery, don't forget to subscribe to Crime Era. The massacre left dozens dead. Mothers, fathers, children, all poisoned under the spell of a man they trusted. But the greatest crime wasn't just the loss of life, it was what followed, the disappearance of the man who caused it all. Elias. Investigators swarmed the site. The barn was silent, bodies covered with sheets, survivors dazed and broken. But Elias? Gone. Not a single trace. The FBI launched one of the most intense manhunts in cult history. His photo was printed on wanted posters. Sketches were sent nationwide. Some claimed he boarded a Greyhound bus that very night. Others swore his most loyal followers hid his body so he could live forever in legend. But then, whispers spread. In small towns across America, strangers reported seeing a man preaching salvation through sacrifice. His words chillingly similar to Elias. Could it be him? Or just the ghost of fear following survivors wherever they went? A chilling wave of reports has surfaced, whispers that the prophet of the Chosen Path may have returned. In 2005, a woman in Texas claimed she was approached by a preacher calling himself Father Holt. His message? Almost identical to Elias. Salvation requires sacrifice. In 2013, a former cult deprogrammer reported an underground group in Oregon calling themselves the Second Path. They refused outside contact and vanished after a single raid attempt. And in 2021, an anonymous video was uploaded to the dark web. In it, a hooded man quoted Elias word for word. To find heaven, one must first walk through the fire. the voice eerily similar to Elias. Could Elias have survived all these years? Some investigators say no, the man would be in his late 70s, maybe older. But others believe that his most devoted followers could have carried his teachings forward, using his name like a ghost to recruit new believers. And here's the most chilling theory. Survivors of the chosen path have reported being followed, watched, even contacted by strangers who say, "The prophet lives." So what's the truth? Is Elias still alive, hiding in the shadows, waiting to rebuild his flock? Or is the legend of Elias now bigger than the man himself, a dark legacy carried on by fanatics who refuse to let him die? For those who lived through the original cult, every rumor reopens old wounds. They've tried to move on, but the idea that Elias or his message might rise again keeps them locked in fear. And for us, the audience, the question remains: when does belief cross the line into blind obedience? How far can one man's words reach, even beyond the grave? Is Elias still alive? Or has his ghost been reborn through those who still worship him? The truth may never be fully known, but one thing is certain: the chosen path did not die that night. It may still be out there, waiting. What do you think? Is Elias a man, a myth, or a movement that refuses to die? Share your thoughts, and subscribe to Crime Era for the next chapter in this haunting saga. The tragedy of the chosen path was more than a story of blind faith. It was a story of manipulation, power, and how the human mind can be twisted in moments of desperation. Psychologists who studied the case revealed how Elias controlled his followers. First, through love bombing, showering them with affection, making each person feel chosen, special, seen. For people who had felt invisible their whole lives, this was intoxicating. Then came isolation. Followers were cut off from families, from jobs, from the outside world. When you strip someone of their anchors, their only source of truth becomes the leader. Elias knew that. He also instilled fear. Followers spoke of constant threats of hell, of shame, of eternal damnation. Fear makes people obey, even against their instincts. But perhaps the most chilling weapon Elias used was hope. He convinced them that suffering would lead to paradise, that their pain was proof of their purity. And in that twisted promise, he had them. Survivors later described a mental prison, one where they doubted their own reality. This is known as gaslighting. When lies are repeated so often, they feel like truth. By the time Elias announced the final journey, his followers weren't thinking clearly. They weren't making a choice. They were trapped. Even today, experts say this case is a textbook example of cult psychology. It shows how ordinary people, mothers, fathers, children, can be turned into pawns in a leader's delusion. Not because they were weak, but because they were human. The scars run deep. Survivors struggle with guilt, asking themselves, "Why didn't I leave? Why didn't I stop it?" But the truth is, by the time Elias led them to that barn, the choice was never truly theirs. And Elias? His fate remains unknown. Some believe he fled and started again under a new name. Others whisper he never left, that he's hiding in plain sight. The question is chilling. If Elias survived, how many more souls has he promised salvation? Years passed. Yet Elias's shadow never disappeared. In small towns across the Midwest, whispers would surface. A preacher with fiery eyes, a man promising salvation to the broken. Each time, investigators rushed in. Each time, they found nothing. But survivors believe he is still alive. That he is still recruiting. That somewhere, another final journey is being prepared. And that's the most terrifying part. Elias may not be a ghost of the past, but a danger of the present. Her name was Anna. She was just 19 years old the night of the final journey. Anna remembers holding her younger sister's hand, the candlelight flickering against Elias's face as he promised them eternal life. She remembers the cup being placed in her hand, the trembling, the whispers of doubt. But something inside her screamed, "Run." When Elias turned his gaze, she dropped the cup. She pulled her sister's hand, whispering, "Don't drink, don't drink." But her sister hesitated. Her sister believed. Anna ran out into the freezing November night. Behind her, she heard the cries, the coughing, The collapse of bodies. She never saw her sister again. When authorities arrived the next morning, Anna was the only known escapee. The only one to tell the world what it was like inside the barn, inside the chosen path. In interviews years later, Anna's voice still trembles. I still see their faces. I still hear the hymns. They believed with all their hearts, and he killed them. And the worst part? Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if maybe they were the lucky ones. Because living with the memories feels like its own kind of death. Anna lives in hiding now. She never married, never had children. The scars of that night made her a ghost of her former self. And she believes Elias is still alive. Watching. Waiting. I know he's out there, she says. And if you ever hear someone promising heaven in exchange for obedience, run. Because I've seen where that path lead. Decades have passed since the barn, since the candles went out and the poison claimed its victims. But the shadow of Elias never truly disappeared. Law enforcement scoured the country. They searched abandoned houses, border towns, even rumors of secret compounds. But no trace of him was ever found. It was as if the earth swallowed him whole. Whispers turned into legends. Some say Elias fled to South America, hiding among other sects and dangerous groups. Others insist he died that night, his body hidden by loyalists. But then came the reports. A preacher in Texas. Healer in New Mexico. A small cult in rural Oregon. Each time, the description was eerily familiar. A man with piercing eyes. A voice that could soothe and command. A promise of salvation wrapped in obedience. None of these sightings were ever confirmed. But for the survivors, especially Anna, every rumor was a fresh wound. He doesn't need an army, Anna once said. He just needs the broken, the lonely, the desperate. There will always be someone who listens. That's what makes him so dangerous. Today, the chosen path is studied by criminologists as one of the most chilling examples of manipulation and control. But one question still haunts investigators. Was Elias a madman chasing power, or a mastermind still hiding in plain sight? And perhaps the most terrifying thought of all, if he's alive, is he building his next chosen path right now? What do you think? Did Elias vanish into legend, or is he still out there waiting for his next congregation? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to Crime Era for more untold stories where salvation and destruction walk hand in hand. Time has a way of burying tragedies, but some wounds refuse to heal. The barn where the chosen path met its end is gone now. Demolished. Replaced by silence, weeds, and the echo of screams carried on the wind. Survivors live scattered lives. Some rebuilt families. Some live in anonymity, still afraid of Elias's shadow. And some never escaped at all, haunted by the memory of that poisoned cup. Investigators closed their files long ago. Case unresolved, stamped in fading ink. Yet the name Elias lingers in whispers, in late-night theories, in forums filled with people who wonder if evil ever truly dies. Because Elias wasn't just a man. He was an idea. A reminder of how hope can be twisted into horror. How faith can be weaponized. How salvation in the wrong hands can become death. The tragedy of the chosen path isn't just about those who died. It's about us. About the questions we still can't answer. Why do people follow? Why do we crave belonging so deeply that we'd surrender everything, even our lives? And what happens when the one we trust most turns out to be the one we should fear? Maybe Elias is gone. Maybe he's not. But the danger he represents is still very real. Because as long as there is desperation, there will always be another Elias waiting in the shadows. And that leaves us with the question that will never truly die. Were they victims of their own faith, or victims of a man who turned faith into a weapon? This was the cult that promised salvation, but delivered death. A story of hope. A story of betrayal. A story of lives stolen in the name of salvation. Tell us what you believe in the comments, and subscribe to Crime Era for more stories where truth is stranger and darker than fiction. Because sometimes, the scariest part of a crime story isn't the ending. It's realizing it could happen again.